than I do, so I don't claim to be the all authority here for Perry and Company on that, but I'll give you all the knowledge that I have. And some of you probably know very little about Cherry Hills Village, so we'll start with that. And if anybody has some wonderful insights that you'd like to pipe in and interject, I'd love that. That would be great. First of all, you know what, John, can you get rid of this for me? I thought we'd do MapQuest just so I could show you where the boundary lines for Cherry Hills Village. Cherry Hills Village is its own city. It's a separate incorporated city. It has its own police department, fire department, mayor, city council, the whole shebang. And the boundary lines, let me see if I can do his little top.
I see a light on it.
Is there?
Don't look that far.
Yeah, I know.
Press it. Did you press the button, Cindy?
Yeah, I'm holding it
pressing
down.
it.
It's not
Can't see
doing
it. Is it pointing the right way?
No.
Yes.
It
Just
is.
kidding.
Yeah, it is pointing the right
Here,
way.
let's see.
Okay, well, you know what, we can do it this way. So Cherry Hills Village is all within Arapahoe County.
Here's a pen.
Okay. Pass that back to you. So nevertheless, first of all, for those of you that haven't been to the Bellevue office, the Bellevue office sits right here this is Bellevue and I-25, okay? And that's actually in Greenwood Village. Bellevue is the dividing line between Greenwood and Cherry Hills. And if you cross I-25 from the Bellevue office and go over here to Monaco, well, actually, this is Monaco Street, but the boundary line for Cherry Hills Village starts right here.
It's working.
You
now.
got it.
Wow.
What did you do?
I just unplugged it.
Well, whatever.
All else fails.
All
Now
right,
it's stuck
so
on.
nevertheless, very
It's
good.
okay.
So boundary lines are this line right here. The back side of this is Monaco. So these properties that face Monaco are in Denver. The ones that don't face Monaco are in Cherry Hills. Goes up here to Quincy, and then this is Happy Canyon. It goes up there to Mansfield, cuts over, goes up Dahlia to Hamden, and then over Hamden to Downing Street. You see this little triangle right here?
Yep.
That is the only commercial property within the city of Cherry Hills Village. Cherry Hills Village has always prided itself in not having commercial development, no businesses, no stores, no retail, no office. But this little triangle is a dry cleaner and a Caribou Coffee and a deli, that sort of thing, and that's the only commercial development in Cherry Hills Village. A little tidbit for you. If you go down here to Clarkson, then that's the other boundary line, and then it goes back down to Bellevue. Okay, so did somebody say something?
Oh, yeah.
Bo.
I was just wondering, the lack of the commercial in Cherry Hills 3, do you account that mostly to the fact that Cherry Hills taxes are almost twice what Greenwood Villages are?
Absolutely. And you said Cherry Hills 3. Cherry Hills 3
Oh,
is
okay,
a
not Cherry
townhome community. He's talking about Cherry Hills Village. And yes, you'll find that property taxes in Cherry Hills Village are going to be significantly higher than they are in the rest of the metro area, and that is why, because they do not have any commercial property tax base. Okay? Again, they pride themselves on that. Cherry Hills Village was incorporated, I want to say back in the 1920s, 1930s. It was always a little farming community, and of course this was all south of Denver, and that's all there were farms out here. And they separated themselves out and made themselves a village, if you will, a city. They have schools and churches there, and again, this is the only commercial development right there in that little triangle. Cherry Hills Village Elementary School sits right here at the corner of Quincy and University. And actually, the school that is there right now is the 5th school structure that has been at that site. There has been a school at the corner of Quincy and University for a long time. The original school was a little red brick schoolhouse, is what I'm told, a little one-room schoolhouse. So again, that was a school for the farming communities that lived out on that side of town. So nevertheless, Cherry Hills Village Elementary School sits right here at the corner of Quincy and University. Across the street from it is the Cherry Hills City Hall offices. That's where they have their fire department, their police station. They have a cute little jail there. Not that I've been a guest there, but I have. Back when my son was in Cub Scouts, we did a tour, and we crossed the street from the school over to the fire station and visited the fire station and the police department. And they actually have a little one cell jail there. And I'll warn you that if you drive up and down University, be cautious, because those Cherry Hills Village police, they like to sit out there and catch speeders, and they do it all the time. So be careful when you go. Respect the speed limits in Cherry Hills is what I'm telling you.
Cindy, isn't there a little section north of Hamden that's Cherry Hills too?
Actually, what you're referencing is this little section right here that is not Cherry Hills Village.
Oh, it isn't.
That is unincorporated Arapahoe County, and that subdivision is called Cherry Hills Heights. And they have an Inglewood mailing address, but that is unincorporated.
Right, but what about across the
And then
university?
across, what you're referencing is over here.
Right.
This is, well, let's see, here are the boundary lines. This is Dartmouth, right here, and actually Dartmouth Circle, which I'm pointing to, and Dartmouth down to Gilpin. This is all Inglewood on the north side. But nevertheless, what you're referencing is that part of that is in the Cherry Creek School District, okay? And so, yes, this unincorporated section called Cherry Hills Heights is in the Cherry Creek School District. And then this area where you see the boundary line between Inglewood and Denver right here, down to the middle of Gilpin Street, which is right about here, all of that is Cherry Creek Schools. But this part on the north side of Hamden is Inglewood. It is not Cherry Hills Village. But these kids all go to Cherry Hills Village Elementary School, okay?
Even where it goes up to, it looks like Arapahoe Acres, maybe?
No, Arapahoe Acres is Inglewood Schools.
Okay.
Okay, that's City of Inglewood, Inglewood Schools. And so if you're driving down Dartmouth from University, if you get down to Gilpin Street, which is again is going to be right about here, the middle of Gilpin Street is the boundary line between Cherry Creek Schools and Inglewood Schools. And the reason for that, I could go on and on here, so you'll have to just tell me to shut up at some point. The reason for that is there is a house at the corner of Gilpin and Dartmouth. And the original school superintendent for the Cherry Creek School District was a man by the name of Mr. Stutler. And if you've ever been over to Cherry Creek High School's football stadium, it's called Stutler Bowl. Nevertheless, Mr. Stutler lived at the corner of Gilpin and Dartmouth. So, in 1950, when they incorporated the Cherry Creek School District to include all of these areas that are off the map and way out into hither and yon, that was done in 1950, and Mr. Stutler was responsible for that. So he put his house in it. Before 1950, all of these kids that lived out here where there was no high school, they had elementary schools scattered throughout Arapahoe County. And for high school and junior high, those kids had to come into either Inglewood schools or Denver schools or Aurora schools. Again, I'm talking before 1950, okay? Again, there were no high schools out here in this Arapahoe County section. Cherry Creek High School, again, the Cherry Creek School District was incorporated in 1950. The high school, I'm not sure if they had their first graduating class or if they started the school in 1954. But they had their 50th anniversary in 2004, 2005, because my son was a freshman there that year, so that's how I know that. So, nevertheless, and a little known fact also is that there's a little segment over here, right in here. Remember I said the western boundary is Clarkson Street. There's a section of Cherry Hills Village right here. It does not include Martin Lane, which is right there. That is in the Inglewood School District. And most people don't know that. So in Cherry Hills Village, there's a small section that is not in the Cherry Creek School District. It is in the Inglewood School District, right?
So that comes down to Martin Lane, but
It does not include Martin
but
Lane.
not including.
Does
it's
not,
the part
so
north of-
Kenyon,
Ogden, that little,
Yeah, that
Mhm.
little circle right
Right.
below.
that little circle that comes off of Clarkson, okay? And I'm not sure about, I don't know if any of you know where the Downing House is right here. I'm not sure, that might be in that segment too. I'm not positive if that's included in Cherry Creek or if it's in the Inglewood schools. But that can be confusing for people. So within Cherry Hills Village, again, you see these big swaths where there's no streets. You've got, well, first of all, schools. Cherry Hills Village Elementary School. St. Mary's, which is a private school, is right here on University. And then Kent Denver is right here. And of course, St. Mary's and Kent Denver are private schools. Another little known fact, by a lot of people is that this segment of Cherry Hills Village, this is Holly, over here to that Monaco, back of the property, Monaco boundary line. So from Quincy to Bellevue, from Holly to Monaco, this is in the Cherry Creek School District, but those kids don't go to Cherry Hills Village Elementary School. They go to Greenwood Village Elementary School. And this area is called Charleau. And actually Brooke and I have a listing over here in Charleau that's right on the boundary line. Sits right there, between
Where's that Greenwood Elementary then?
Greenwood Elementary, good question. Greenwood Elementary is just down the street, right about here.
Oh, right.
Okay, and then, so it's in Greenwood Village. And then also on this corner of Holly and Bellevue is West Middle School. So all of these kids from within the Cherry Creek School District, where am I here? So these kids over here, they all come to elementary school here, they go to middle school here, and then they come over here to Cherry Creek High School, which is kind of off from that, it's right about over there, okay? But yes, Greenwood Village Elementary School is right here, and then those kids, I'm sorry, right there. So these kids go over here to Greenwood Elementary, okay?
Doesn't the Littleton School District come in up there somewhere too, right in that Clemson area?
Yep, Littleton School District, well, what you're talking about is the boundary line between Littleton Schools and Cherry Creek Schools. And that's a really confusing thing. There's a segment of Cherry Creek Schools and Cherry Hills Village Elementary School attendance area that squiggles around down here south of Bellevue. If you go to Brookside Drive, parts of South Logan, south of Bellevue, and then Cherryville, where is, you know those boundaries better than I do, Colleen. And I never know exactly where the boundary lines swim in and out. So this,
on the southwest corner of Bellevue and University, off from South Race, all of those go to Littleton School.
Yes, they do.
Cottonwood.
Yes, they do. And Williams.
And all of Williams.
That all goes to.
But there's just a little dip off from South Franklin over to, I believe it's Logan or Clarkson. Clarkson. That's where it ends. And it goes down about 4 blocks. And those kids go to Cherry Creek.
And I wish I knew the history of that, how that happened to be the way it is at one point in time, but that is the way it is. And then if you go over here into the preserve, which is on the south side of Bellevue and Greenwood Village, this little street right here is actually called Colorado Boulevard, and I know that's in the Cherry Creek School District.
Actually, there's a whole corner there. If you took the High Line and kind of go over, which is phase 1, is all Cherry Creek School
Right.
District.
Yes,
And
but
that
yeah,
was negotiated for water rights.
Was it water rights that did that? Okay. Okay. Well, yes, I know that Battlelure, and then I know this part of the preserve is in the Cherry Creek School District. I believe this part of the preserve is in
That's all the
Littleton, right?
That's all the.
Yeah, this is all Littleton. So there's sort of this little boundary line that kind of goes about like that, I want to say. That is Cherry Creek Schools, and these kids, again, those go to, well, actually, I think those are actually supposed to go to Greenwood, but I know a kid that went to Cherry Hills from there. These kids go to Greenwood Elementary, which is, again, right there, okay? But yes, this part of Greenwood Village is in the Littleton School District, and so they would go to Littleton High School, which is right over here, okay?
Even Centennial goes to the west.
Pardon me?
In the Centennial area, west.
Sure, absolutely.
Middle school
The West Middle School attendance area goes all the way down to County Line Road, which is, of course, off our map here. And those kids that live down in Willow Creek, down by I-25 and County Line Road, those go to West Middle School as well. And then, of course, they go to Cherry Creek High School. So we could talk more about the Cherry Creek School District at another time. I'm supposed to be talking about Cherry Hills Village real estate right now. But yes, you can see that the boundary lines, you really have to go property by property when you get south of Bellevue to know whether you're in Littleton Schools or Cherry Creek Schools. And some people prefer one over the other. It's personal preference.